Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, the 27th of February. Welcome to the D3D4 football podcast dedicated to all things Leagues 1 and 2. Now, you might be surprised to hear a different voice than what you normally hear at the start of these podcasts. My name is Edward Walker. I'm normally the one on this pod who gets far too emotionally invested in Burton Albion results and usually groans every time our regular co-host James makes an unnecessary Oxford United reference which just doesn't need to be there. From this weekend, however, things are going to be a little bit different. For those who aren't aware, James is currently absent from the pod. He is taking a hiatus away for a period of time for family reasons, and we wish him and his family all the best and look forward to having him hopefully part of the pod again at some point in the future. So, the bad news to you lot listening is you've got to put up with me more. But the good news is that it's not just me. I am joined today by regular co-host David Jenkins. And David, I imagine you're feeling pretty happy after yesterday.
I'm in a very good mood after yesterday, and it has to be said. Very, very happy about yesterday for sure.
Yeah, and we'll get on to why exactly that as well. And I'm also delighted to be joined by Gabriel Sutton. And Gabe, I'm sure you're quite happy as well, because much like me, with it being international weekend and international postponements, we haven't had to watch our team play.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I'm a Birmingham City fan, and we were obviously out of action this weekend, but I was at Vale Park for the brilliant James Proctor goal, which we'll come on to.
Excellent. Look forward to hearing that as well. A reminder before we get going that this podcast is in partnership with The Big Step, which tackles football's relationship with gambling. There is an excessive presence of gambling adverts within football, and The Big Step continue to do great work to raise awareness about the dangers of gambling and the impact that it can have on so many people's lives. So we really have enjoyed being partnered with them throughout the season so far. So let's get going, and we'll begin with the world's best third tier.
League One.
League One, 6 games played, and all the international break having quite an impact on the fixture schedule has become quite usual, so we only had 6 of the 12 games going ahead. I'm going to begin with what looked certainly the game of the day on paper. Ipswich Town against Plymouth Argyle, a playoff chaser against a playoff team, and it was the playoff chaser that emerged victorious by 1-0. The goal coming from Sam Morsey towards the end of the first half after really good work from James Norwood to set him up for a very simple finish. I don't know about you boys, but I thought Ipswich were sensational in this.
Yeah, I mean, I was very impressed by them. Obviously, just seeing the highlights earlier, but very impressed. I think that they really have started to get on the front foot and push themselves forward. And if they're going to make that play for those playoff positions this season, then now is definitely the time to begin doing that.
It's a really interesting conversation about whether they're in the playoffs one, because you look at the race at the moment. They're currently 5 points behind Sheffield Wednesday. They've played 40 matches. The only team above them that's also played 40 games is Plymouth Argyle, who they beat. It really is a tough ask for them in this final run, isn't it, Gab?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to take a bit of a risk by doing some slight calculations in my head now. It looks like the points required to finish in the playoffs will be about 80. That's kind of what I would say. If Sheffield Wednesday take another 10 points or 11 points from their last 7 games, then you're looking at about 80 points, which means Ipswich would need 16 points from their remaining 6 games. So that's it's well over 2 points a game. So it's a very big ask, I think, for Ipswich Town, but the way they're playing and the chances they're creating with Bertrand Salina, how good's he been as that attacking midfielder? He's just such a joy to watch in this division. Wes Burns as well, with his direct runs from right wing back. You know, these are players that are Tariq Backinson in midfield as well. And I think I would go as far as to say that Ipswich have been really good defensively under Kieran McKenna. They've been creating a lot of chances as well. And I think that maybe they've sometimes just missed that finishing touch to turn none or one goal into 2, 3 or 4. And I do think that, you know, if they can make the playoffs this season, then great. If they just miss out this season, then I think it's just a case really of getting the right strikers in and maybe tying up 1 or 2 players for another year, because I think the foundations are in place for a really strong promotion push next season.
Yeah, I completely agree. They've massively improved under Kieran McKenna. They've had 8 home games since he's arrived at Portman Road. They've won 6 of them, drawn 2, lost none of them at the moment. Currently 11 unbeaten in the league, going fantastic. You look at their final run as well. they've got a home game against Cambridge, travel to Shrewsbury. They've got to play Rotherham and Wigan, which is where you maybe question how well they can do in those two tough games, but then finish with Crewe and Charlton as well. The possibility is there, David.
Oh, for sure. Like there's plenty of games there that they could pick up those points. As you've just alluded to, obviously those two games against was it Rotherham and Wigan?
Rotherham and Wigan, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So Rotherham and Wigan for me, of course, I think are going to be the real difficult ones there. But there's definitely points to be taken up there, especially with Crewe being where they are, arguably already. I would argue they're already down for next season playing League Two football. Cheltenham, their form's improved, but I'm not sure whether they would be looking positive to pick up a result from that game. But even so, we know that there's always some big upsets in this league, and they'd have to have a mammoth effort. But if any team's going to do it with the ability they have and the home form they currently have, it could very well be Ipswich.
Word on Plymouth as well. Quite affected, it feels, by losing James Bolton during the game yesterday in the centre of that back three. I was listening very well to Carl Robinson, who was on the Quest highlights yesterday. I thought he did an excellent bit of analysis for them across the game, and I'm quite glad James isn't on this pod, because that's all we'd be talking about if we had Carl Robinson on the highlights and then him doing a pod afterwards. So it's good to not have him around for that. Argyle Gab, still, what about them for the playoffs? Because they're currently within it by 5 points. They have played more than everyone else around them. They've got a tricky run in the games, as we've been saying. What do you fancy for them?
Well, I just on that point of losing James Bolton, I'm really interested in the fact that it was Romany Critchley that came on for James Bolton rather than Dan Scarr, because Critchley's a left-footed. I mean, it's interesting because I would have thought James Bolton would be playing on the right of the back three and James Wilson would be playing in the middle. That if you'd given me those three names with Macaulay Gillespie, that's what I would have thought. But it seems like Stephen Schumacher likes James Bolton in the middle of the back three. So anyway, a little bit surprised about that, but obviously it's worked because they've conceded just one goal in 7 games and won 6 of them. So I'm who am I to? It's a little bit curious, I suppose. But I mean the results have been outstanding, and they're still in very much a good position. They're on 74 points as it is. I think that's a favourable position to hold on to a top 6 berth, and it depends whether Sunderland or Wickham are going to put together a run outside it, because I think Oxford, Sheffield Wednesday obviously looked very good yesterday. So it's a question of whether Sunderland or Wickham can get the points required. I'm not sure they will. So I think with the work that Plymouth have done in the last few weeks, they maybe earned themselves the right to maybe not quite get it right yesterday.
Yeah, you mentioned Sheffield Wednesday. We'll move on to them now. They hosted Cheltenham Town yesterday. Initially went a goal behind to Alfie May, who is now on 20 league goals this season. It's only Ross Stewart who's ahead of him in the goal-scoring charts. He's got to be one of the most significant Cheltenham Town signings of the last few years. The impact he has had on the team. And his talent was always kind of on display at Doncaster Rovers. I remember in League Two a few years back. And you wondered about how it would compare during his time at Cheltenham. He had a fairly productive season last year in a team that didn't really score a huge number of goals, but they seem to have taken a different approach this year, a much better attacking approach, maybe not the same level of defensive solidity. And they came up against a Wednesday side yesterday who I thought were absolutely sensational, and all 4 goals, brilliant. Don't know about you boys, but I thought those goals were fantastic, whether it was from Jack Hunt, from Luongo, Gregory, Byers, all really showing up the quality. That midfield 3 Wednesday was something to behold, Gab.
Yeah, I'm going to confess I wasn't listening to you then because I was trying to think of a Stewart and May pun. Rob Stewart, Maggie May. Wake up, Maggie. I won't do the whole line. But yeah, what a fantastic win for Sheffield Wednesday. And they've got it in their locker, haven't they? Whenever they come up against a mid-table side that's a little bit on the beach, potentially, to use a cliche, they absolutely obliterated Cambridge. And then they've done something similar to Cheltenham Town, and they've got so many options as well, haven't they? Callum Patterson, he would be a good Championship centre forward. He was part of the Cardiff side that got into the playoffs in the Championship a couple of seasons ago, and he only had time for a 1-minute cameo. So I think that shows the depth that Darren Moore is working with.
Barry Bannon, David again, still in the show. Is he the best individual player in this league?
I think you definitely have to put him up there, for sure. I mean, my only reservations about the Sheffield Wednesday team, if I can be candid for a moment, would be down to purely the fact of the inconsistency at times. I think they seem to be very good at times to be able to absolutely obliterate teams. But then you have those blips in the middle, like the draw to Accrington and the draw to Gillingham at Priestfield last weekend. I think that, they're moving very positively. But actually, I think that, they need to increase that consistency as well. But yeah, on the point of Bannon, I would definitely say he's probably top 3, maybe top 1 in terms of the real quality of players that are in this division at this level.
Top 1, is that a thing?
That's a Brian Clough saying that.
Right.
I'm not.
It's
I'm the
just
top
number
1,
isn't it? I suppose. But
what was he saying? I don't think I'm one of the best managers in the country, but I'm in the top 1. I think that was his saying. Really good quote.
Let's say top 3.
Sheffield Wednesday are going to be aiming for a top 1 finish next season.
Top 1 finish. Well, I've got to say, just before that, the playoffs at the minute is Milton Keynes Dons, Plymouth Argyle, Oxford United, and Sheffield Wednesday. That's 2 mouth-watering sets of ties at the minute. I kind of want the players to stay that way with the quality of the football that could be on display with that. But we'll see what happens with this running. So much excitement still to enjoy with League One. Down to the bottom, AFC Wimbledon. They are now 20 league games without a win. It's 21 in all competitions if you include their FA Cup defeat as well. They hosted Cambridge United yesterday. Beaten 1-0 by an Adam May goal, which you would have to say was probably helped into the net by Nick Zanev. Hit from a good distance, but Zanev kind of palms it up into the net. I think
it was a good effort.
It was a good effort, but I also think Zanev might feel a bit disappointed that he hasn't maybe got a stronger hand to tip it round the post and it kind of helped it instead. Up for debate whether that, but AFC Wimbledon, Gab. I found the discussion around Robinson and AFC Wimbledon really interesting. There was a statement put out during the week. It's basically explaining that there is support towards Robinson from the boards of AFC Wimbledon. And the responses you'd probably expect was quite mixed. I noticed there were quite a number who were agreeing that this is probably the best thing for the long-term strategy of AFC Wimbledon. And there were others who, rightly, I think, were pointing out to the winless run and how AFC Wimbledon are in danger of relegation at the moment. Where do you sit on this?
This is, I feel incredibly conflicted, Ed, because on the one hand, I've got huge admiration for Mark Robinson, and for a long time I've been quite staunch in my belief that this is an excellent coach. This is someone who instills confidence into young players, and that if AFC Wimbledon stick with the process that they're on, they've got the youngest squad in the league, they've got a bottom half League 2 budget, they've got to rally behind their manager. But I would say that over the last couple of weeks, I've kind of gone slightly more to the slightly more short-termist way of thinking that a lot of Wimbledon fans, like Jim Hampshire on Twitter and people who are saying Wimbledon need a reaction. And oddly, if Wimbledon had no chance of staying up, I would have actually been more in line with the rationale of giving Mark Robinson the opportunity to lead them into next season. But I think because of the situation you got where Crewe and Doncaster are gone and there's a good chance of catching Fleetwood, Morecambe are vulnerable as well, Wimbledon still have a chance. And is Mark Robinson the best man that Wimbledon could have to lead them into these last 7 games, given that these players looked shot of confidence? Okay, it was a decent first half. Or a passable first half yesterday without them actually having many shots on target. Maybe we're almost overrating the better periods of Wimbledon's halves because the standards have sunk so low. But that as soon as Adam May scored that goal with a wonderful strike. And
look, it was a good hit. I'll agree with that. I like the angle of it.
But as soon as that happened, it was all heads went down. And listen, I've got some sympathy for Mark Robinson because it's hard with young players, they're finding their way. But at the same time, I think they need a firefighter. You look at the impact Neil Harris has had at Gillingham, I think they need a street fighter, someone that's just going to lift everyone and galvanise the whole club for these 7 games, because they've got to give themselves every opportunity to try and stay up. And at the moment, I'm not sure Mark Robinson is the man to do that.
David, I'd love your thoughts on this as well, because myself personally, I really sympathise with Robinson. I think back to the start of the season and that wonderful beginning they had, this really exciting football, really front-footed, really positive with, as Gab says, a really young group of players. You lose someone like Ollie Palmer during the January window to Wrexham for a bid that admittedly you just could not turn down for a player that age. And replacing him was never really going to be an easy task. They've replaced him with Sam Cosgrove, who I'm still waiting for him to find his level. I cannot believe that fee that Birmingham City paid for him. How long ago was it now, Gab? 2 years?
Oh, I think it was 2020, January 2020.
Oh, goodness me. It's really not worked out for him. And he's still waiting to see his first goal for the club. Where do you stand on this Robinson situation, David?
See, this is a really tough one, isn't it? I'm really struggling, but I think the main thing for me that makes me struggle here is the fact that their run into the end of the season now is so mixed. They've got Sheffield Wednesday away, they've got Cheltenham at home, Milton Keynes, like MK Dons at home, they've got Crewe, Wickham, Fleetwood, and Accrington. Like, those are not easy games in there, not easy games at all. Like, I'm never gonna knock Mark Robinson for the job he's done there, because to have the budget they've got and to have made out of it what they've made out of it with the start of the season, of course, as you say, the loss of Ollie Palmer was absolutely massive, and that really has turned their season around. But then I suppose they weren't firing on all cylinders before that, were they? Like, this is a winless run that's been going since the 7th of December last year. So it's not as if that was the be all and end all, but it's certainly a significant point in that. I'd imagine even if they do go down here, though, they're the kind of club that will fish into the National League. They'll bring out some other gems and they'll push themselves back up. But looking at this run, I mean, it's a challenge, isn't it? Maybe personally, maybe again, it's a bit reactionary, but I would probably say make a change, just given the games that they have left to play. It might be good to have someone uplifting, but then maybe that's more of a biased perspective as a Gillingham fan, as Gabe has just alluded to. So,
no, could hear your opinion. Cambridge, word on them from myself, just continuing a exceptional season, really. You look at them and Cheltenham Town, the objective to them coming up at the start of the season was to survive. They've more than managed that. There's currently a group of teams probably battling for a top half spot in that 12th position. A few points between them at the moment. There's a chance Cambridge could be there. It's currently Cheltenham Town, and the two sides have just had wonderful campaigns, and the work that Mike Bonner and Michael Duff have done over the season deserves such a huge amount of credit for sure.
Yeah, I just if I can interject
go for it.
On this, Michael, it often feels like when we talk about sort of championship jobs, Michael Duff is often the one that seems to be linked, and yet maybe I don't know what you think, Ed, but sometimes we don't actually give the same attention to Mark Bonner when those kind of jobs become available, when he's done a fabulous job as well, when you consider how many people have written Cambridge off, including myself, for the start of the season.
The thing is, Mark Bonner's just, that kind of person you look at and think, I just can't imagine you anywhere else.
Yeah.
That's Mark Bonner. It's like John Yems at Crawley. I just can't imagine Yems, if he left Crawley, going anywhere else, really. Look, Bonner is a Cambridge man, isn't he? He was in the youth system for so many years, and the work he's done with Cambridge is wonderful. And I kind of agree. There's the chance he can move on, but I'd look at it and think that's weird, and it would take a bit of adjusting to for that period, is what I'm saying. But certainly, I think if you do put Duff in these conversations to championship jobs, Bonner has shown to be as capable. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to see him stay in charge at Cambridge United for next season.
I would as well, certainly.
They can add a little bit more creativity in that midfield. They'll obviously have to replace Adam May and maybe Joe Ironside. But if they can get some good recruitment right, then maybe they could work their way a little bit further up the division. But then if Bonner does go, then I think it could be more difficult.
Indeed. David, Neil Harris. Wow.
Oh, yes.
Went to Accrington Stanley yesterday, an Accrington side who hadn't lost in 9 games at the Crown Ground. You beat them 2-1. You ran your luck a bit, maybe a little bit at the end, you'd have to say. Accrington getting a late penalty and putting some late attempts on goal. But you're not only out the bottom 4 now, you're now 4 clear of the bottom 4 and 19th in the league. Are you in nosebleed territory yet?
I don't know how to answer that. I'm just astounded. I mean, it's not done yet for sure. Like, there are still There are still points around us, but it certainly is. It's a massive gap that we needed to put some points between us and the bottom four. I was really pleased as well to see yesterday Charlie Kelman scoring, which was really lovely for him. And I think actually him and Vidane Oliver seem to be forming a really lovely partnership up top. And that's become really positive. And I think actually the influence of Harris and his previous playing experience in those kind of positions has really helped to boost that sort of aspect. But I think for me, 14 points in 12 games, I believe, since Harris came in. So when he came in, we were 10, 11 points off getting out the zone. We're now 4 points above, as you say. And it is just, it's just mesmerising, isn't it? To have that sort of level of change within a club that still is the same squad inherited from Steve Evans. I mean, wow, just wow. And you've got players like Aaron Chapman who obviously weren't having a look in beforehand, and now I don't know where this goalkeeper's come from, but he's a shadow of the player he's much better than the player that we were all giving him credit for when he was coming in the cup games. Now he's playing in a regular term within the team. But I'm just astounded by the way things have gone for us. And it just looks even more positive when you just look in general about what he's done over the last 12 games or so. I mean, we've got some tough run-ins, to be fair. We've still got to play Sunderland, Wickham, Portsmouth and Rotherham. So in a relatively good Cheltenham Town side and Fleetwood in there. So there's not going to be any easy games within our last six. But we've picked up the points where it matters, and hopefully we can keep ourselves this side of the line.
David, can I just sort of pick your brains on where Stevenage go, if you do sort of finish the job between now and the end of the season? Because there was so many question marks over Paul Scally and his ownership regime. And when Gillingham were losing every week, that was all people were talking about. And of course, it's great that you're not losing every week now. It's great that you're continuing to pick up points. But at the same time, Paul Scally's the same person. It's just that he's been able to bring in Neil Harris. So what do you think? Is there a structure in place for next season that Paul Scally can put in place? Can he improve certain areas of the club that would appeal to fans? Do you think he can sort out a deal for Neil Harris? What do you see the direction for Gillingham over the next few months?
Short answer, probably not.
Okay.
Just because, for me personally, I just think that Paul Scally has admitted that he's not financially able to bring the club forward and put more investment in. And I just feel that actually maybe it's time for him to step aside. And I don't think, I think fan feeling, regardless of what he chooses to do, I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference of the fans having any kind of positive opinion over him, really.
Yeah, I suppose it's the other question, though, is who's going to take over, because I agree. I think there needs to be change upstairs at Gillingham, but also it's, are the right owners making the offers? And then it's a question of Scally listening to those people. But certainly that does make a lot of sense. And I just think as brilliant a job as Neil Harris has done, I don't think that the good results should take anything away from the question marks over the leadership of the club.
I agree.
Excellent. Still going really well under Neil Harris this season as well. Gillingham. Two other results in League One yesterday. A pair of 1-0 wins. Probably not had too big an impact on the season. It's 3 wins in a row now to Charlton Athletic, all with clean sheets. They went to Doncaster yesterday. 1-1-0. Corey Blackett-Taylor down the left, causing problems throughout. Had an absolutely outstanding game. Won the penalty, which Connor Washington failed to convert. Saw that shot saved. But did set up Jen Stockley for the winner. Donny's relegation, it just feels inevitable now, lads, doesn't it, really? Yeah. Is there a small chance of it maybe happening?
No,
not for me. I think they're down.
It has been a difficult season for them. It's also 3 wins in a row to Shrewsbury Town as well, all with clean sheets. Who's put 50p in them recently? That's my question, because that's 3 wins in a row, as I said. Clean sheets in 6 of the last 7 games as well. A lovely low hit from Daniel Ludo from the edge of the box to score it. He's up to 12 now in League One. Lincoln continuing on an impressive campaign, but where's this Shrewsbury come from, Gab?
It's a really good question, Ed.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Because I've talked to Shrewsbury fans about a month ago, and the issue really was where's the creativity? They don't really have what you'd call a quality number 10. They've got George Nurse as a left wing back who's very attacking, but then on the right they've got Elliot Bennett who's a lot more conservative. And sometimes if you could nullify Nurse, then it's harder for them to create chances for Bowman and Udo, who are 2 strikers that I would say are having good seasons. But I think what we've seen recently is that they've been able to carry a threat in transition. We saw that in the 3-0 victory at Rotherham. We certainly saw that in the 5-0 thumping of Morecambe. And for me, that's where you've got Daniel Udo at his best. He's not really a back-to-goal striker, although he's got the physical capability to do that. I think he's better when he's facing goal and when he's sort of running at defenders. And Shrewsbury have been allowed to have been able to do that recently, and that's why they're one of the formed sides in League One. But I do think that if I'm going to throw it forward to next season, because they are safe now, I do think that maybe they could do with a slightly more nimble, creative number 10 who can just operate behind Bowman and Udo if they keep hold of him, or maybe blocks them if he pushes on when Udo leaves, as opposed to having 3 out-and-out centre forwards, because it's not something you see too often, I guess.
Yeah, we've had questions about Shrewsbury Town's midfield pretty much all season, haven't we, really? Seen players kind of deputising out of position in there, but they've done well, and as you say...
Faunus done well, though, on loan from Forest.
Very impressive, Torrey Thorne. I'm a big fan of him as well. Shrewsbury up to 15th now, 48 points. You'd have to say that's a job done to them. All those relegation concerns they might have had a while ago seem well and truly gone now. They're totally heading in a positive direction at the end of this season. The League One table... Not too much change at the top. The top 3 all stayed where they were. You've still got Rotherham top, 80 points from 39 games. Wigan just a point behind on 79, but they played 37. Still got so much of that season left to go for them. MK Dons, 3 points behind Wigan currently, 4 behind Rotherham on 39 games. It's interesting to see if they can maybe pursue those top 2 places towards the end of the season. We'll see how that goes. Plymouth Argyle after that defeat stayed 4th, 74 points from 40 games. Oxford United, 69 points from 39 games. And Sheffield Wednesday round up the player places also with 69 points from 39 games. Sunderland 2 points outside of that, 67 from 39. Wickham a point behind them on 66 from 39. Ipswich, as we mentioned, tough running, but maybe the chance of the playoffs still at this stage. They've got 64 points from 40. And then you're probably looking at Portsmouth and Bolton with their season being done really to the campaign. But a very good season from Bolton overall.
Just a question on Ipswich. I mean, it's not so much whether Ipswich will put a run together, because they probably can, but it's who out of Argyle, Oxford and Sheffield Wednesday is going to drop out. I'm not sure which of those sides I want to say is going to drop out, because they all look strong.
That is a very good question, Gab. We'll have to see what happens with that, really. I don't want to speculate anything at this stage. It's just the wrong thing to do. Just could backfire on you so easily if you try and do it now. It's been so good. Down the bottom, Crewe Alexandra, 25 points from 39 games. It's just a case of when, not if for them, as is probably the case with Doncaster as well. They're on 30 points from 40 games. Morecambe still with a chance, didn't play yesterday, 32 from 39. AFC Wimbledon still in that really long winless run. That just needs to come to an end. They're approaching half the season without a win now, which is quite a run to behold, really. They're on 33 points from 39. Fleetwood a point ahead of them on 34, and have also played 38. Gillingham up to 19th. Still can't believe I'm saying that. 37 points from 40. And then quite a gap to Lincoln, 42 from 39, and the teams in the middle of the table. Let's drop down and take a look at the world's best 4th tier.
League 2.
League 2, Gab. I want to start at Vale Park. You were there to see Port Vale pick up a 2-0 win over a fellow promotion rival in Sutton United. Do you want to spend this section talking about the game, or do you just want to talk about Jamie Proctor's goal? Because I'll very happily do either.
I think Jamie Proctor's goal seems like...
Paolo di Proctor is the word I just described. If you haven't seen this yet, do.
I mean, to be fair, I was thinking of having a second D3D4 episode just.
I'm thinking that as well. And the scary thing is as well, anyone who ever remembers that Paolo Di Canio goal against Wimbledon, it was exactly 22 years ago to the day that it happened.
Yeah, that's very funny.
Very funny, isn't it? A bit freaky, but there you go.
Yeah, I suppose that's kind of life in a way. Like, things, just random things like that happen. Like the odds are that sometimes things like that. Anyway, so Jamie Proctor's goal, yeah, it was just incredible, wasn't it? I mean, it was like he scissor kicked it. It was like he jumped up and he kicked it in the air. And it's just incredibly rare that someone scores a goal with their feet when both feet are in the air. Like, it's absolutely mind-blowing. It almost sort of defies the laws of physics. And the accuracy and the power that he got onto it. Like, you would think 99 times out of 100 he would have just miskicked that. But and when it went in, like, Vale fans were celebrating, but a lot of them, and I'd include myself in this, I just had my mouth open for about a minute.
It is one of those moments, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just...
You're just speechless.
I'd seen that live, and there are some Vale fans that were just looking at each other, just amazed that it had happened. So, absolutely stunning goal.
Port Vale, 4 wins in 5 now. They're up to 4th because that's how tight this promotion battle is. They were starting outside the playoffs before the beginning of yesterday, and now they're up into 4th. 3 points behind Northampton Town, who are 3rd, and have a game in hand on them. Gab, how impressed are you with Port Vale at the moment?
I was so impressed with them yesterday, Ed, and what I think was so important how they played is, when I saw Sutton United, it was quite clear their defensive block. So they kind of had 2 backs of 4, and then Badil in the 10 role, and then Wilson sort of running off him, and then in the attacking phase they wanted Ajiboye and Boldvine to really join in with the attack. But it was really hard for them to kind of go from the defensive phase to the attacking phase, because you're asking so much of the 2 wide players, and then sometimes you end up with a big gap in the middle, especially if Buteman goes forward. And what Port Vale did so well in contrast to that was the second phases, the middle phases, where one attacker's maybe broken down a little bit and then they've got to try and sustain it. They always kept that intensity up, and the wide centre-backs were so crucial to that for me. I looked at Nathan Smith. He was always, even when we're 2-0 up, he was always making runs ahead of David Worrell at right wing back. And then Connor Hall, there were times he was pressing right up into the final third. So impressive from that perspective, and linked up really nicely with Mal Benning, who I thought was really good as well. And it was just that they always sustained pressure. Harry Charsley as well was full of running. I'm not going to go through every 11 and how good every individual player was.
You're almost there, come on.
Yeah,
tell us about Edstone.
But yeah, it was so impressive, and they just always kept that intensity up, and it was a fully deserved victory. And do you know what? I think this Vale side are very much in the mix for automatic promotion. We may come on to Northampton. I've got some reservations about them. I think Port Vale could be the side that joins Exeter and Forest Green potentially.
You don't seem to be very popular with Copper stands at the moment, but
we'll get on
to that. No, Vale, I completely agree. I was up at Vale Park recently to see them beat Mansfield Town 3-1 after coming from behind. And the thing that I noticed to me is the all-round game of James Wilson and the way he works with Jamie Proctor. It's fantastic. They had a period where they were trying this 4-3-3 and utilising natural strikers, you'd say, in a sort of right-wing position, and it wasn't really getting the best. And since they made this transition back to a 3-5-2, it's working so well for them, and this is a really impressive run into the season as well, and we'll see how it goes for them. David, your client, Steve Evans, had his first game yesterday down at Exeter City. They were beaten 2-1, a brace from Sam Stubbs. Maybe some questions about that second one, the way he's essentially up on the back of his opponent to get up to the header, but it's a towering pair of headers, you'd have to say. Stevenage equalising initially through Luke Norris, but they're falling behind again. Exeter are retaining their second spot. They're now 5 ahead of 4th place Port Vale, having played the same games. Is it starting to feel like that second spot might be wrapped up?
Oof.
I ask you the hard questions.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, maybe Is that a good enough answer? Maybe.
Maybe. Now that I think about saying it, it's probably best for the sake of the fans if I stay quiet about Exeter and just let them get on with their business, because the last thing Exeter want is expectation.
It's just so it's so difficult to say anything about it, isn't it? Considering just the gap between or just such slim margins at the top of this league at the moment, like where we're talking, even as you've alluded to at the beginning there, where we've got Port Vale going from 8th to 4th in one game week. It's just mesmerising. I don't know if if I'm honest, I don't know if even Forest Green are safe at the top of the table at this point. They may have the games in hand, but the points on the board is what counts. But I just feel like this might be, for me, one of the most unpredictable leagues that I've seen in a very long time, where it's just, we could end up with, at this point, Tranmere winning the league, or, Mansfield Town could push up and get those points and win the league. It's just, I don't know if anybody could say a team specifically has locked down a position, because it is just so tight.
I'm going to disagree with David a little bit. I think Forest Green are safe. I think that win at Colchester was huge for them to end that winless run, and I think that they'll go on and secure top spot. If we say by points per game projections that 78 points is the required tally for automatic promotion, then that would leave Exeter needing 10 points from their remaining 8 games. And even with the injuries that they've got in midfield, and even with Sam Nombe's been absent for a period, they've got Callum Rowe, who's apparently playing really well for them in midfield as well, in the absence of Timothy Dieng, who's back. So that situation is maybe easing up a little bit. I think 10 points from 8 games is more than achievable for Exeter. Now, it could be that the ultimate tally is a bit more than that, in which case it could get more complex. But I don't think Exeter are a lock for second by any means at all, but I do think they're in a really good position.
Well, if you look at the fixtures, it's certainly an opportunity. You have to say, if they get through this, they're deserving of that second spot. They go to Newport County next weekend. They then have to go up to Carlisle, who are just something else now under Paul Simpson. We'll get onto that later on. They host Colchester. They've got to go to Tranmere. They host Rochdale and Barrow, which you probably say are opportunities. And the last 2 are away at Northampton and at home to Port Vale. Oh, this running is so good. So good. It's, like you say, nothing is set in stone. I agree with you, Gab, as well. That Forest Green win at Colchester, just much needed. Bit of a grind in the end to get through there, but it probably does feel like the title will be theirs at the end. It'll be interesting to see who gets that automatic spots with them. Third in the table currently is Northampton Town. They went to Hartlepool United yesterday. They hosted Hartlepool United yesterday, a Hartlepool United side who are in pretty decent away form currently. But they won 2-0. The goals coming from Sam Hoskins and a goal from Chanka Zimba. Cardiff City on loan from the club. Scoring with his first touch as well. Did not come on too long afterwards. And the goal originating from a set piece as well. Gab, Northampton. There's been some reservations around people towards their automatic promotion credentials. But the thing I would say, they have been in that top 3 longer than most of the teams have.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, we're approaching April now, and you're not in the top 3 to this stage by accident. And the reason Northampton are up there is because they've been so good defensively with Fraser Horsfall and John Guthrie. They've posed such a threat from set pieces. Mitch Pinnock has been one of the best players in the division this season. They've got Sam Hoskins and Labala who can carry a threat as well. So this is this is a Northampton side that are having a good season. I've got some reservations talking to Cobblers fans last night about how they go long from goal kicks, but then they don't have a striker up top that they would expect to win aerial duels, because Louis Pire isn't really a target man. So that's something that I'm a little bit confused about, truthfully. I'd be interested to see how Chanka Zimba.
Do you think it could be the presence of second men? Perhaps, maybe it's Pinnock, Hoskins lurking around, able to pick up that second ball even as the pair doesn't necessarily win it.
It just seems strange to me that you'd go long, but you've not got a target man to flick things onto. You're relying on the opposition getting the ball back and then giving the ball away again. That just feels like an odd thing to rely on. But having said that, I've got to step back and say what Northampton have done, what John Brady's done has worked for them. They're getting results. And so I do, even though I have my reservations, I have got to credit them for where they are.
yeah, going very well. Be interesting to see if they can hold on to that automatic spot. It does feel a bit like, I agree with you, that some Northampton fans feel they're not deserving of the place they're in, or they don't feel as confident about them taking an automatic spot with everything else so tight around them at the minute.
Northampton fans will say the things that I'm saying, and then when I say it, they all of a sudden get their backs up.
It's what we are as football fans. We have our own opinions on things, but no one else is allowed to say them. That's the way we are as fans. We're very protective of our club. Yeah. Mansfield Town. They won the game late again. It's more late heartbreak for their opponents, Oldham Athletic. They went to Oldham yesterday, went a goal behind to Davis Keeler-Dunn, who I still think is going to be so crucial to the goal scoring if Oldham are going to pull off this escape, because it's still in the chances with them. And as we'll get onto, they have a very opportunistic game, if that's the right words, the next weekend. We'll get onto that. But Oldham played Mansfield, went ahead through Davis Keeler-Dunn, Mansfield equalising through Reece Oates and winning it in the 95th minute through George Lapsley. A Reece Oates shot, so essentially deflected off the post and fell perfectly into his path, but you take the goal however it comes. Mansfield, David, just outside the playoffs, a point off Tranmere at the moment, still got more games than everyone else above them. Try and predict what they're going to do at the minute, honestly.
I don't know if anyone can.
I don't think anyone can either. I completely agree with you.
I don't know if anyone can. I mean, I do think they're in a very positive position though. They've got 3 games on hand on most of the people above them. 2 games. No, 3 games on most, and then 1 game on hand.
It's hard to follow it, isn't it?
Forest Green. It really is.
Difficult.
So they've got those games in hand, and actually their form recently has been quite positive, bar those 2 recent losses. To Vale and Tranmere, who of course are around those places with them too. But other than that, they seem to be really positive in terms of a lot of their play, and a lot of their ability seems to be. It's one of those races this season where it's really difficult to tell. But I suppose this is the same situation we were talking similarly about Wigan. And could still be talking about Wigan in League One in relation to, is it better to have those points on the board like those teams above them, or is it better to have those 3 games in hand? I think for them right now, and with their last couple of wins, it probably is better for them to have those games in hand, and because they seem to be really pushing themselves towards that sort of echelon of play in those playoff places. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're in there. But then again, I also wouldn't be surprised, given how this season is going, if they make it just outside of it either. So it's one of those, really, isn't it?
Back 5 they began with yesterday. James Perch, Ollie Hawkins, John Joe Atall at the back, Stephen Quinn, Kieran Wallace, Matty Longstaff in midfield. A couple of players in this Mansfield squad that maybe are bigged up a bit too much, namely Jamie Murphy and Lucas Akins. Akins was back in the squad yesterday after a little period out. Jamie Murphy, not really.
Akins slander from a Burton Albion fan, Ed?
I'm still not bitter about him leaving, I promise. Jamie Murphy, look, I remember how good he was under Clough in the back end of 1920. He hasn't really found his feet yet at Mansfield Town, so we'll have to see whether he can find a proper position for him. But Oldham, Gab, this fight for relegation they're in, they're running out of time, and the game next week against Stevenage, the team directly above them, 3 points above. I'm trying to think of the right word to describe it. I don't want to use huge, I want to use a better word for that, but I have to get a thesaurus up to describe the best word for that.
Gigantic.
We could use that.
Vital.
Mammoth was a word that came into my head as well. They've had a really tough time with it, Oldham, recently, haven't they? That's another late heartbreak yesterday.
Yeah, it's a crushing blow, I think, for Oldham Athletic in their battle to beat the drop. And you're right, Davis Keeler-Dunn is a really good player. He's one of those players I'd like to see in maybe a better all-round team. I don't think the structure at Oldham has quite been in place over the last couple of years, but maybe in a better side, I think he could carry a threat. But yeah, that game against Stevenage is huge, because as much as Oldham fans could be forgiven for maybe feeling a little bit resigned after 4 or 5 straight defeats, I think it is now, if they beat Stevenage, they actually go outside the drop zone, and all of a sudden the resurrection is back on. So my goodness, what a vitally important match that is.
Well, the game was so crazy yesterday. There was a point where we had Stevenage losing and Oldham were winning, and Oldham, as you say, were out that bottom 2 and then fell back into again with that late defeat to Mansfield. It's just an enormous game yesterday. I was going to use the term mouth-drawling, but you can't really describe a League 2 relegation game as mouth-drawling, can you? It's just a really, really important fixture for both sides, really. It could be the one that takes Oldham out of trouble, or it could be the one that just leaves them out of range, really. We'll have to see. David, Carlisle United under Paul Simpson. 6 wins out of 7. They went and hosted Bristol Rovers yesterday. Beat them 1-0. A Bristol Rovers side that had previously won the last 4 games. It's their first defeat in 5. Busy day for both goalkeepers, you have to say, James Belshaw and Mark Howard. The goal scrambled home by Christian Dennis after some good work from Amari Patrick in the build-up. I've run out of words to what Carlisle are doing, really.
I would have to agree. There are many superlatives you could use, but I think Simpson has absolutely done wonders here. And I think for me, what makes this game so much more impressive is ultimately comes down to the fact of the form that Bristol Rovers have been in, and to be able to fell a team that are in that much form, they've pushed into those playoff places. But Carlisle, just the position that they were in before Simpson has come in, and we weren't entirely sure on what was going to happen with them. And then now, what? Yeah, I agree. Like, what can you possibly say about this team? Like, they are just...
I'm sure there are Carlisle United fans who wish seasons began in March, because if they began in March, they'd be loving life right now. Absolutely loving it.
Yeah, I would agree. I just think, if they can keep this run of form going, I think, to be honest with you, they've absolutely secured their safety, and the season's probably done for them. But positionally, who knows where they could go here? I don't know if it will make much difference come the end of the season, but certainly if Simpson then comes in, they've got him for next season as well, and if he can bring in the right people, I hate to think what this Carlisle team could be doing next year.
It'd be interesting to see. That win brings them up to a position now in 18th, where they've got Leyton Orient on the same points. Walsall, Harrogate and Bradford just above are all only a point ahead. And then you've got Hartlepool and Crawley, who are 5 points ahead of them. There's a small possibility of top half if they keep this extreme form up, but we'll really have to see with that. I've got to give a mention to Carlisle's signings. I remember feeling quite doubtful about them, and I'll hold my hands up. I didn't think much of Toby Show Silva when he signed in the January window, likewise Christian Dennis, but the work that Paul Simpson has got out of them in this 5-3-2 formation that they're using is so effective, and Amari Patrick having a wonderful impact since returning to Burton Albion as well. Just nothing but praise to Carlisle, really.
Yeah, just on Patrick as well. I think having him in that central role is a masterstroke for Carlisle, because he's really quick, isn't he? He's just such an athlete, and often sometimes you look at someone like that and you want them out wide because you think 1v1s. But actually, I think because Patrick's in a central role, it means that whenever there's a turnover, it doesn't matter what side of the pitch it's on, he can always go over there to sort of influence it. And when you've got someone that can individually take 2 or 3 opponents out of the game, it doesn't half make a huge difference. And I think that's such a key part of why Carlisle have gone from being prime relegation candidates to pretty much safe in March.
It's so good to see a great spirit at Brunton Park as well. Carlisle just loving life at the moment. Another team who had a good weekend yesterday was Colchester United. They hosted Tranmere Rovers, who themselves are in that just ridiculous promotion battle. Colchester just needing another win, really, to assure themselves of safety. And they got that win right at the end through young Junior Chamadeo. He's a player I've been keeping quite an eye on for a while. A very young, wide player. Has played everywhere up the right-hand side and can play most places up the left as well. The technique on his volley at the end of that game, the way it just drops out of the sky from that Alan Judge hit and he just sidefoots it into the roof of the net. Wonderful, wonderful technique to get that win. That's a Colchester win. They are now 11 clear of 23rd. You would have to say the job's been done to them under Wayne Brown. Tranmere, Gab, are difficult to really judge them.
Yeah, they've... I'm really intrigued by that midfield partnership between Lewis Warrington and Lee O'Connor, and I think that they've obviously yesterday it was actually Warrington and Chris Merry that played in midfield because O'Connor was absent, but yeah, it's you do. I think when you've got a 4-4-2 and you do put a lot of responsibility on your midfielders to cover a lot of ground, and Warrington's someone that I really like, but then you've got 2 out-and-out strikers in Kane Hemmings and Elliot Nevitt, and Nevitt's a really hard-working forward. He's come up from non-league Warrington Rylands 1906 they signed him from, and then Kane Hemmings is someone who likes to pick up the ball to feet and link up play from there. But they probably miss someone like a Paul Glatzel who can sort of buzz around the pitch as maybe a second striker and maybe mix things up a little bit. And maybe with the conventional front two, they're missing someone who can link up with the midfield a little bit. And I would maybe hazard a guess that that's why they felt a defeat at Colchester in a game of few chances.
Jay Spearing back in the squad as well. It'd be very good to see him back on the pitch as well, because I think his influence in that midfield goes without saying. Salford came from behind to win at home to Walsall yesterday, initially behind to Roland Menegise, equalised through Matt Smith, who I think has just been a wonderful, wonderful signing for them. I think the quality was never really in doubt. You're looking at a player who's really a cut above the level and really influencing the Salford team that maybe still has a chance at the playoffs, boys. Very small chance. They're unbeaten in 9. It is a big ask. They're outside of that big playoff race conversation. I wouldn't put them in the automatic conversation at all. But with the strength of this team, the Matt Smith signing, the run that they're on, there's a small chance of it, is there not?
Still 2 games in hand there as well, isn't there?
Exactly. It makes you wonder.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of looking at the calculations a little bit. If we say that 63 points from 39 games is the going rate for a playoff spot now, that over 46 games would give you a tally of 74 points. So that means that Salford need 18 points from their last 9 games. So essentially 2 points a game between now and the end of the season. That I don't think is an unrealistic ask for me. I think
completely agree with you there.
Because they've still got to play. They've got Crawley coming up, which I think is a winnable game. Then they've got Hartlepool, a couple of mid-table sides who are sort of don't really have anything immediate to play for. Then they've got Harrogate Town after playing Port Vale as well. So I think that there is something to be said for Salford maybe putting a few wins together in the next 4 or 5 games and maybe making things interesting.
Really worth keeping an eye on, I think. I think if you write them off, it might be a mistake to do. We'll see what happens with them. Boys, change in management at Barrow. They went to Leyton Orient yesterday under their new boss, Phil Brown. Lost 2-0. Leyton Orient under Richie Wellens going exemplary. That's 3 wins in a row to them. They're still unbeaten under Richie Wellens. Great pair of goals yesterday. One from Paul Smith from a just remarkable angle, really, rounding the keeper out wide and then chipping him from such a tight angle to get it over the goalkeeper. Raul Sotirio, in his midfield and forward role, has got 6 goals in 7 games. He is on fire at the moment and a player really flourishing under Richie Wellens. But I suppose the big conversation here, boys, is the management change at Barrow, which, if I remember, happened during the week. It feels like it happened longer than that. I don't think we talked about it before now.
Last Sunday after the pod, I think.
Yes, it happened. It feels like it happened a lot longer. Yeah. To be honest, a lot's happened since. But Mark Cooper came out of Barrow, and my thoughts were the right decision. It just did not feel like they were heading in the right direction at all under Mark Cooper, and I did not feel he was getting the best out of what, to me, is actually a better group of players than their 21st place position reflects. But then Phil Brown comes in the day after, and I don't know about you boys, but I looked at it and thought, that's just not it.
I think they needed a change at Barrow. I don't think anyone's going to make an argument against that. I think they did need a change, but I would agree. I don't think that's the change they needed. I think there's lots of work to do, and maybe there's potentially some other candidates that might have been in a better position to help them here.
Gab, is my opinion Phil Brown clouded a bit by his Southend time in that second spell, do you think? Because I feel really uninspired by this.
Yeah, I think in his first spell, I don't think it's just his second stint at Southend though, because he also struggled at Swindon as well. They were sort of 17th, I think, I think it was 2 wins in 11 for him in his first spell at Swindon, and then he got on the permanent job there, and then in November they were something like 17th before Richie Wellens took over. So yeah, he's basically not succeeded as a manager for 4 or 5 years. So I think that would be the big concern for me. And this feeds into another point that I'd like to make, which is why aren't more top managers in the non-league circuit getting opportunities? Because in Germany they have this model where if you're doing really well as a manager, then you're headhunted and you're fast-tracked 2 or 3 divisions above. But in England we seem to have this culture where you're doing it but at a certain level, And actually, I think there's some really good managers in the non-league circuit. We've seen Danny Cowley, for example. He was at Concord Rangers. I'm sure there's a few other examples of managers that have come up and from the non-league circuit and ended up doing really well. So for me, that's something that I'd like to see more of. Darryl Clark as well at Port Vale.
Yeah, it does feel like some of these football league clubs aren't willing to take that risk a bit. Or maybe they want a bit of certainty from someone who at least knows the level before, which is a shame. I completely agree with you that if you go down the National League, and even the National League North or South, for instance, there are some bosses who really do feel deserving of a chance in the Football League, and it feels like they're only really going to get it if they get their club there.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem that you've got. And for me, if a manager is someone that oversees the whole operation, and that's so important that you get the right manager in because it dictates everything that happens underneath. And for me, if I was owning a club, I would be willing to invest that little bit more, maybe in a compensation fee, in order to get a manager that can get everything out of the group of players that you've got. Because then you can maybe take a little bit out of the playing budget. You can compromise in certain areas because you've got someone that's able to develop players. So I would want someone that's been successful recently, and I don't particularly mind if that's been at a lower level.
Indeed. Crawley Town yesterday beat Rochdale 1-0. That's back-to-back wins to Crawley Town. I don't know about you lot, but I found Ashley Nadasan's goal quite funny. The way it was quite a scrappy affair. Knocked in at the second attempt. Crawley, quite as usual as well, calling upon Glenn Morris to really keep them in the game after some tests from Dale. Rochdale are winless in 7 games. They're on 40 points at the minute. There's a 9-point gap between them and Oldham. Any concerns to either of you two?
I don't have concerns about Rochdale in terms of going down this season. I think that 9 points at this stage is a huge gap. So I think they'll be okay in terms of this season. But I do have concerns about them in terms of throwing it forward a little bit because this has been, a transitional season. It's been a learning curve. There's been Robbie Stockdale's first ever gig in as a number one. It's a new board. They've had to sell players. They're just coming off the back of David Bottomley's involvement in the club. He sold the youth team. So lots of reasons that made you think, even the relegation last season, that made you think that this was going to be a difficult season. But I think there's a lot of concerns and growing concerns, really, that Robbie Stockdale doesn't actually have a plan B, and he sticks to the 3-4-3. And for me, he's not been able to adjust to the loss of Jake Beasley and Aaron Morley. Now, those things you can understand up to a point, but then you've got to try, and if you're going to rely on those players for your playing style, then why don't you look at who else is in the squad who can do similar jobs? So, for example, Ethan Brearley is supposed to be this really talented 18-year-old for Rochdale. They're in a position where they're not going to go up. They're probably not going to go down. Why not give Ethan Brearley a role and give him a chance to try and collect the ball off the defence and distribute if that's what they need? They signed Luke Charman from Darlington in January. They paid a transfer fee for him, and it was only his first start in sort of late March yesterday. So for me, I've got some question marks over Robbie Stockdale, and maybe a few more than maybe I had a couple of weeks ago or even a month ago. And I'm not 100% sure that he's the right man to lead the Dale forward.
Yeah, I echo your thoughts as well. Ethan Brearley, the news was announced that he was heading out to Spennymoor Town on a loan deal, and it wasn't met too well by Rochdale fans at all. And I agree. I think there's more talent in this squad than the formation shows. I reckon a more positive setup could really get some good stuff out of this Rochdale side. And if he doesn't change, I think there'll be some question marks coming his way into next season, certainly. Final 2 results. Scunthorpe, rock bottom, lost 3-0 at home to Harrogate Town yesterday. A brace from corners from Will Smith and a Jack Diamond goal. 71 conceded now for the Iron. I don't want to talk about it too much. It's just a miserable situation to Scunthorpe, really. They are heading to the National League. There can't be any doubt, really. It's a first win in 8th for Harrogate. Scunthorpe themselves are winners since the 8th of February. Just a miserable time for the Iron, and I think we just leave that there, really, for that. And the other result at Valley Parade, Bradford City 0, Newport County 0, the only 0-0 draw yesterday across D3D4. Quite good that we only get one. maybe a wasted opportunity to Bradford, you have to say. Probably an even game overall. They're now 8 without a win at Valley Parade, Bradford, which is interesting. I didn't really realise that kind of crept up on me. I wasn't expecting to hear that anywhere, but it's perhaps an example about the work that Mark Hughes is going to have to do with Bradford as well. I really question the recruitment in forward areas because besides the Mandy Cook, maybe there isn't as much depth as you'd want there to be, certainly.
I'd be really interested to see if they can put together deals for Jamie Walker and Dion Pereira. Pereira in particular, I think he got injured quite early on in his loan spell, or maybe he was injured when he actually signed or something along those lines. But since he's come into the side, he's made a real difference, I would say, and looks like an exciting prospect. And Jamie Walker, I thought even under Derek Adams, looked probably their likeliest to make something happen. And I think that if you put those two players in a Mark Hughes side next season, then I think they could be on for good things. Obviously, money could be a bit of a stumbling block with Walker, but maybe Luton might see a full season in League Two as a good sort of part of the progression plan for Dion Pereira, so they might be able to do a deal for him for next season. But if not, I would trust Mark Hughes with the contacts he has and the standing he has in the game to do the deals that will really improve Bradford. And I do think that we're maybe looking at quite a big overhaul of players as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they can put together a squad that can challenge for promotion next season.
Certainly feels an interesting summer at Bradford City, absolutely. Finish it off with the League Two table. Forest Green, one of two teams didn't play today, the other was Swindon Town, but Forest Green stayed top. They're on 72 points from 37 games. It does still feel like it's their title to lose, certainly, and it should be theirs. Exeter, that win yesterday, strengthening their position in second, 68 points from 38 games. Northampton, 2 behind on 66 from 39, complete the top 3. And then we get to the playoffs, where you have fourth place Port Vale, who are on 63 points from 38 games. Newport County, who are on 63 points but from 39 games. Bristol Rovers, who are on 63 points from 39 games. Tranmere Rovers, who are on 63 points from 39 games. Mansfield Town just outside from 62 points from 36 games. Swindon Town 61 from 38. Sutton United 61 from 39. It's still just bonkers. It's absolutely crazy, that promotion race at the minute. And then Salford, as we mentioned, maybe an outside push to the playoffs with a strong thorn they're on. They're on 56 points from 37 games played. Down the bottom, Scunthorpe United just look dead and buried, really. 24 points from 39 games. Oldham on 31 from 38. They're 3 behind Stevenage, who are on 34 and also played 38. And of course, those two play each other next week. Could be an absolutely crucial game to decide in that relegation battle. Barrow on 37 from 38. Rochdale on 40 from 38. Colchester on 42 from 39. And that completes the week. My thanks to David Jenkins and Gabriel Sutton for your input this week.
Yeah, very much. Thanks for having me.
It's been quite an interesting occasion being the host. I'm not used to it. I kind of feel like I'm in a position of far too much power, and I'm not used to having that power yet, but we'll see how it goes long term.
We want to take that power away from you going forward.
Certainly. My thanks to all of you listening, and we'll see you again next week for more from the D3D4 Football Podcast. Until then, goodbye.